So, welcome to our Wednesdays. A couple Wednesdays ago, which will be on our recordings, we dealt with severe comprehension problems that worked a lot with working with the vocabulary from pictures and then picturing and then summarizing from the picture, predicting, and carrying that over in the text. Today, we're going to be addressing like a little higher order, like middle school, high school comprehension, and how I'd approach that. And we may go back to the more severe program if the child can't function on what we're doing right now. But what we're doing right now is a slick system. It's easy to remember. So we'll be addressing that. And then we're going to address the issue of how can I help spelling and why is spelling so difficult and what can I expect from spelling? That will be the second issue, okay? So let us begin with the first issue, which has to do with our case study. Now, in general, we have two basic problems that occur, which underline reading. You have phonics, or sounding out words, and you have linguistic or language comprehension. Now, what we found with our kids with phonics problems, that their phonics is low, but many times their linguistic comprehension is at grade level or higher. So if we get a sixth grader, if you read to them, they'd understand it. They just can't decode it. So our goal is and with these kids, the program moves quickly because we're catching up to their oral language. That's the prime student that we get. But occasionally we get students who have poor linguistic comprehension, but can decode or read words. Some refer to that as hyperlexia. Hyperlexia is where they can sound out words, read words, but they don't understand, okay? And that's actually a tougher problem than dealing with dyslexia. For older kids, what I've tried to do is design, and I actually designed this initially with Detroit high schoolers in mind. I tried to design something that makes sense in their realm of understanding. And so I played with how can I take the essentials that we need for comprehension and put it in a form that a child could actually follow and take, because studies indicate when you teach a lot of techniques for comprehension, students don't use it by themselves. I mean, that's just real clear. So, I mean, there's been books that have 112 strategies for comprehension. They're not going to remember any of them. So what I'm trying to set up is something that's memorable, okay? And it's called the case study. So in the case study, we have two approaches. We have what the teacher's doing and what the student's doing. So let me show you first the teacher version. Actually, let me start with the student version. Then I'll show what the teacher does. Okay. Okay. Okay, so this is the case study. So what I've done, I've been working on this case study for a bit. And what I found out is that what I try to produce to start with the kid is, hey, we're going to solve a case. Every story, every movie, every book is really the idea of solving a case. And the case pretty much you basically have characters that do something in some time. There's some sort of problem or conflict that has to be solved. There's some resolution of the conflict, and then there's the end of the story. And most stories, whether it's a play from Shakespeare, Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet, to Jurassic Park in movies, to Chariots of Fire, they pretty much all follow that road. A Spielberg one does a lot of like rising actions, falling, they have a lot of conflicts and problems. So you'll have multiple conflicts. But here's how we want to start. We want to start and tell the kids that what we want to do is find out what the case is. Once we have the case, we want to move into the gist statement, which gives us the basic underlying main idea of the story. And then eventually we want to come up with the conflict gist, which is what the conflict is and how it's resolved. So there's three components. We have the case, the gist, and the conflict gist. Okay, so let's start with the gist. Who or what, where, and when. So who or what is involved? What did she or he do or they do? Where did this occur? When did this occur? And then we'd like the student to be trying to make a picture or make a movie if they can. So far, I'm picturing or making this. So this is where we start. So if you have a child with severe comprehension, what I'm going to be doing initially is going at the sentence level. So when they read a sentence, I'm going to pause and say, well, who are we dealing with? What's happening? Where and when? Then I'm going to have them read to me, and I'm going to do the case. Then I will read to them. And if I find they can do that, I'm going to move up to a couple sentences and have them do the case. And then when they read to me, I'll do a couple. And then I want to move to a paragraph. Okay. This is where I was in my tutoring with the student. Pretty quickly, we could do this. So we were at the gist statement at the paragraph level, where he would read to me and I would do it, and then I would read to him. So with the comprehension, we alternate because the kids can read. We alternate where the child reads to me and I can focus on the gist, then I read to them. So here's again where we start. Who or what is involved? Okay, so let me get up a book. The Rocks. The Rocks is in Tales of Adventure. And so we would look at the cover again, say, what do you think this is going to be about based on the cover? Okay. If the child has severe comprehension problems, we can go right to the first major picture and start talking about what they're seeing in the picture and trying to work as much vocab as I can in there. This is if the child's at a lower level. And this I talked about in the severe comprehension program. But basically, if I have a junior high student, I will start by introducing the case study, and he will read, "It fell to earth and landed in the sandy hills of Texas." Then I'll say, I'm going to give the case. Who or what? Well, it. And what happened? Well, it landed in, okay, where? The sandy hills of Texas. It doesn't tell us when. Now, the question is, what is it? Well, based on the fact of this picture, I'm assuming it is a meteor. All right, then I read to him. It had come from the sun and it just missed a bus as it smashed into the sand. Okay, Jim, tell me what's the who or what? Well, it's it again. Well, what's the it? A meteor. Okay, where are we coming? Well, it's coming from the sun. Okay, what else happened? It missed a bus. And again, where else? It smashed into the sand. Okay, so we have the it, we have the what happened, we have more what's. Okay, then he'll read to me, it was a big rock 10 feet long. Okay, so again, we're talking, let's study it, the meteor, that's the who. What? Well, it was a big rock 10 feet long. There's no real where or when. I'm going to keep going. It spun and hummed. Okay, so the meteor now it's telling what had happened. You got the what, the meteor, and we got what it did. So we have here the who or what did what. That's all we got. Then I'll read to the child. A fox ran up to it and sniffed it. I again will say, what's it referring to? Now, one of the problems kids with comprehension have is they don't know what pronouns refer to. So this is a huge issue. I want to state this again. Kids with comprehension often don't know what pronouns refer to. So I'm going to keep coming back to what that pronoun refers to. It's a meteor. There was this one child who read this entire book and thought that she was the dog. It wasn't the main girl in the character. Well, that changes the story a bit, right? So we want to point out constantly what pronouns refer to. So initially, kids will have trouble with that who, what, where, when. They'll have difficulty with that, and they're going to have a bit of trouble with the pronouns. That's going to go on from the beginning. They also may have trouble with the punctuation, what a period means. So I'll have to point. That means pause. Okay, so we are initially going with the case study. He reads to me. I do the case, the who or what, did what, where, when. I'll point out pronouns. I'll read them. Now he's catching on. He's getting that. So now I'm going to go a larger chunk. So he'll read to me. I'll say, let's read me about halfway to here. The bus stopped next to the rock. The bus driver got off the bus and checked it. 6 of the kids left the bus too. As the kids got next to the rock, it hummed and spun. Okay, so what are we dealing with? What's the who or what? Well, you got a bus and you got a bus driver who stopped the bus. You also have kids who left it. Now, you have it, and I'll say, what's hit refer to? Oh, the meteor. This meteor spun, and what it did is it shot rocks at the kids, okay? Do we really have a where or when here? Not really. That's already been established up here. We basically have the who or what did what. Okay, then he'll read to me. One of the rocks hit Fred in the shin. One of the rocks hit Jill in the leg. The rest of the kids yelled and ran from the rock. Okay, so here's what we got. Our who or what is Fred and Jill. What happened? They got hit with rocks. And we also have the rest of the kids who ran. So we're primarily dealing with our who or what. So again, once we're dealing the case study, I'm just pointing out that some sentences initially will have the basic case. Others will just be dealing with the who or what. Okay. Then we'll move to a larger group, and then we'll start looking at the picture, and I'll have them summarize what's going on from the picture. I'll say, let's take this information we have here and give it a good summary here in the picture. Okay. If they have trouble, I'll have them go back and look at the words. Okay. Get off the bus, yelled Ted. The bus driver, this rock is hot. It's tossing rocks at us. The rock could not be stopped. It slid in front of the bus. Okay. Spielberg passed this up for Jurassic Park. I'm not sure why. I thought this had maybe more excitement, but he decided to go with that. Now, let's say he's got the idea of the case. Now I'm going to introduce the idea of the basic gist. I'll say, okay, we now have the case. Now let's look at the gist of the story. Gist is really another word for main idea. But I'll say, okay, our gist is somebody did something because. Somebody or something did something because. Pardon. Somebody or something did something because. Okay. Now, so the child will read to me. The bus driver slammed a rock, but it just spun and spun. It hit the bus with small rocks. Then the big rock smashed into the bus. All the kids yelled as they were tossed from their seats. I'll do a gist. Okay, so we got somebody, the bus driver, who's going after the rocks. Okay, so he did something, he smashed into it. The response is the rocks. It hit the rocks. Somebody did something, and it caused the kids to be tossed from their seats. And he did it because it's pretty clear. Because here, the rocks were throwing small rocks at kids. It's pretty clear that's what happened. Okay, so somebody or something. We have the bus driver ran into the rock, and kids were tossed from their seat. It smashed into the bus, and he did it because he was trying to stop it from tossing rocks. Then I'll read to the child. Ted scanned the rock for a thin crack so he could smash it with the bus. He slammed into the rock with the bus, and then he backed up the bus. Again, Ted slammed into the rock and backed up. So I might ask, once I'm into the gist, because is more of an abstraction. It's a why. Because when you do the case study, you're not really getting into why. It's in the gist that I'm getting why did he do it. So here I can start asking why questions or inference questions. This is where because is often an inference. So I can, while we're doing the gist, ask a few inference questions like, all the kids yelled that they were tossed from the seats. Before we move on, I could go, well, what do you infer that the bus driver will do again? Okay. And why do you think he'll do that again? Oh, what do you think he'll do if that fails? So I can start getting the inference. I can also infer how the kids feel. How do you think these kids feel about what's going on? How do you think Ted feels about what's going on? Okay. So let me pause to show you what I'm doing with the gist, so this doesn't look like it's coming out of nowhere. So we got going with the case study. Now with a child with severe problems, we may stay at the case study for a chapter or two, if we need to. But if they're getting the idea pretty quick, we're now at the gist. Somebody or something did something because. Okay, best guess as to what will happen next. That's what I was doing. Ask a why question at the end of the page. Now, if you have a child ask a why question, they answer it, Pam, you're on the money. If you can get a kid, by the way, that raises comprehension 15% if a child just can do that. So I could, at that point, have them ask a why question, like, why is this meteor down here anyway? And why are these rocks attacking the bus? Now you answer it. Well, maybe they're invading and these rocks have intelligence and are going to take over the earth. That's a good hypothesis. Let's see if that's true. I can also get a hypothesis or inference about how characters feel about this. So when I'm in the gist statement, I will be doing the gist, but I can also elaborate with more of these inferencing, because when you're at the why, you're at inferencing. Okay, any questions before I move on? This makes sense? Okay, all right. Now, let me go back to the story.
I think I was doing the first part of that, the stopping and after a paragraph and asking the who, what,
Yeah.
when, but I was never doing it myself to show them what I wanted.
Yeah, that's crucial. The model is crucial.
I forget to, yeah.
This comes from a lot of studies that found in a classroom, if you taught a comprehension issue and they did it, versus you taught it and then modeled it regularly, the ones where the teacher actually did a think aloud and model what their thinking is, what's going on, like I'm doing, say, thinking about, well, this is, I think is what's going on. The kids it was a much higher usage of the technique when teachers did think alouds and demonstrated the use of the technique. Okay. The other issue is the fact that pretty much when you're at the case study, you're at a very descriptive, concrete level, first, second grade. It's kind of well, even in kindergarten, you're getting into who did what, where, and when. So this is a very basic thing that a high school kid can do. And many times, if they're not doing it, many times because they're just not paying attention, they're reading the words. That's why I start at the sentence level, so they're immediately accountable, and then move into a couple. But the other issue, by me doing it, it's so reasonable and they get a break, they can't help but work with you. Okay. All right, so now I'm at the gist. Ted slipped the bus away from the rock. I'm reading to the kid now. But the rock would not be stopped. It rushed at the bus again and tossed chunks of rock at the bus. The kids on the bus yelled as the rock smashed the glass of the bus. Some small bits of rock hit 6 of the kids. They bled. All the kids hid in the back of the bus. Okay. All right. Jim, give me the gist. Well, Ted slipped away from the bus, but the rock would not stop. Okay, that's good. That's part of the gist. But let's look at the whole gist. So Ted slipped away, right? That's partly what happened. And the kids were yelling because their rocks were smashing in, and small ones, but the rock would not stop. It just kept coming after him. So we have Ted trying to get away. The kids are still getting smacked with the rock because the bus would not stop. Okay, that's a fuller gist. Now, why? Give me the because. Well, okay, so Ted tried to slip away because the rocks were throwing rocks at him. But why are the rocks attacking? Do we know that yet? No. All right, well, what do you think? Give me a because. Well, obviously, it finds the bus and the kids objectionable. So maybe that's just it. It maybe finds them as enemies. That's a nice guess. Good because. Now, we are getting now more effects. Initially, the rock fell through some rocks at the kids, but now it's running into the bus. Now it's breaking windows and now kids. So we now are having more effects. So we're now moving into the conflict gist. So let's go to the conflict gist. Somebody or something did something because the effects were, the problems were, and the solution was. Okay, what were the effects of the action? Well, the effects of the rock attack was what, Jim? Okay, well, initially, kids, there were some rocks thrown at them. The bus tried to hit the rock, unsuccessful. Now the rock's attacking the bus. So there's like 3 or 4 effects. Good. What problem resulted? Well, I think now the problem is escaping from this because this is dangerous. Okay. Do we know how it's solved yet? No, but that's the problem. Yeah, so we now have a bigger gist. We have the conflict gist. So now I start modeling that. So notice the kid that wasn't comprehending, initially we got him doing the concrete. Once he could get it, we added the gist, and we're now at the inferencing or why questions. And now we're building in some other inferencing after we do the gist. We start asking these kind of questions. And now we started to have more effects. We now are in the conflict, which are the effects and the problems and eventually solution. So then I give questions. This is actually, again, from the student's view. This is eventually for a student as he's reading, for them to walk through this themselves while they're reading, and for me to guide it. Okay. So a student that's doing this in a conflict gist, if he reads a paragraph, he might go, what were effects of the action? What problems resulted? How was the problem solved? Don't know. How did the character see the situation that occurred, which is perspectives? Well, they saw it as dangerous. Several of the kids were scared. What are the world views of the main characters? That's a little more sophisticated, you know. Well, the kids were in school. Their main view was life is simple, school is fun, and rocks attacking buses are not in their worldview. So again, this is loaded with high cognition. Okay. Now, along with this, I have points that the teacher will support. Are you making a movie while reading? The case may enlarge as you read. In other words, as your case is growing, you're going to have more people and more facts. Look at the cover and pictures to help with location and characters. Place a friend and an actor in the story to help you make a movie. That helps. I'll put my friend in here. I'll put this. Place a setting you've been to, like a forest, a park, or beach, any place you've been to. So have you been to a sandy park? Put that in there so it helps you picture it. So this is a guidance.
Are we supposed to see the case study now?
You're not?
No.
Oh, shoot. Thank you. You see it now? Good. So here are the points that initially the teacher will help make. Make a mental movie. The case may enlarge as you read. Look at the cover and pictures. Place a friend or actor in, etc. Place a setting. So this is just good picturing. This is what good reading wants you to do, is connect your background to what you read. This is how you do it. So this is what the child's doing, but the teacher's prompting this. And then when they're in the gist, we get across that the gist addresses the main idea of the story. Then we ask why questions about the story and answer it. Improves 15%. And there may be more gists during the course of the investigation. You can, like in a Spielberg movie, you'll have several gists. And then we have the conflict. And I mentioned at the end, some stories have an open ending, like Rod Serling's, where you don't know what happens, and some have a closed. And then we'll have the child evaluate it. You like it or not, what were good or bad actions. So this is your guideline. Concrete. Once we got the concrete, we introduce the main idea we call the gist of the story. And then once they're in the gist and we're asking inferencing questions, we can move to the conflict gist once we're starting to get more effects. Okay. And we start to then get problems, and then we're looking for a solution. And again, these are guidelines teachers can use in asking questions. So this is the student gist. Concrete, kindergarten, first, second, third grade. Abstract, this is getting, they start inferencing in first, second grade, but more higher abstraction occurs in concrete operations, which may happen more like third, fourth, fifth. And then we're getting into elaboration of effects, problems, and solutions, which is middle school, high school. A high school program will be stressing, why did something happen? Something happened because, they'll stress that. Then they'll be talking about what are the effects of that. Then they'll separately talk about what are the problems that occurred. And then they'll talk about what are some solutions and what are you attacking. So it's walking through these four components because that's part of logical thinking. Why is happening? What are the facts? Why is it happening? Okay. What are the effects? What are the problems? What are the solutions? We're trying to get a child to think logically. Okay. All right. Now let's look at the teacher gist.
Steve, do we have this? Has it been sent to us?
I think so. If
Okay,
not, we
I'm gonna
will.
find it. Okay.
So this is the teacher case study. You don't see it yet. Thanks, Kathleen, for reminding me on that. Always do that. Appreciate that. Okay, so the case, who, what, where, and when. So this is a teacher's, and I'm trying to help the teacher help the student with the student case. So it's telling you, prompt students to try and make a movie using ideas from the student case. Review the case. More people, places, and times may enter. Remind the student to pause and reread. Huge, huge. If a child spaces, I say, okay, you're connected, you're reading. When you space, you break the connection, you need to reread. And I'll show that with just doing this. You need to reread. So stay connected to your text, bring in your background. When it breaks, reread. Stay connected, bring in your background. When that breaks, reread. Now that happens a lot at certain locations where there's chaos. And when there's chaos, things break. And I'll say, okay, let's go back and reread that. Okay. So this is prompts for the teacher. I then help the teacher go, starts 1 to 4, begin with the details of the case demonstrated above. This is usually done every page or two unless they have difficulties. In other words, if you've got a decoder who comprehends well, I don't have to do all this. It's more a matter of a place for discussion. See, when I read books with kids that are low decoding, high comprehension, I more just discuss the book. Okay, who is happening, where, what? What do you think? Why is it happening? Are there effects? So it's more, but I don't do it regularly where he's reading or she's reading. And when they make 2 errors, I take over for 2 sentences. I'm using pressure release. It's primarily a phonics approach. And occasionally I'll pause and say, let's review a case and let's do a gist. And I got kids, a kid I'm working with now, couldn't read well, but he doesn't have phonological problems and he's really bright. And I'm just shocked at how fast we can, I say something once and he's got it. I'm not used to that. So I'll teach him the gist and that's it. I teach it once, then I can do it. So there are kids we can move much quicker. So in the phonics program, we're primarily focusing on phonics and using this for discussion. Whereas with the Start 5, we do the case each paragraph, we alternate reading. And again, for the severe kids, we're doing it each sentence or 2, just to get it going. Okay. The gist, somebody or something did something because. Now what I do here is give more why questions that the teacher can do. But I also point out that there's like 5 inferences. You have inference at the sentence level. Why did Jim rip up the note or kick the door? You have drawing conclusions as inferencing across paragraphs. What conclusion can you draw as to why Susan feels inadequate? What can you conclude about her friends? Then you have prediction, which is inferencing about the future. What do you think will happen next? And last, you'll have inferencing about people's perspectives, which is, we get into more here, the inferencing about perspectives. But these are things the teacher can promote once you're at the abstract level, okay? Now, at this level, starts 1 to 4, occasionally ask a why question, and they give a prediction. Whereas 5 alternate saying gist or inference question. The student will read, the teacher will model an inference question or gist, then the teacher will read to the student. So this is giving guidance to it. Notice here for severe problems, it tells you to follow P cubed and Quora in the manual, which I discuss in the severe program. So we then have conflict gist. This again gives teacher guidance of the kind of more abstract questions they can answer. And it does say that with both starts 1 to 5, that we do, did you dislike the story? Why would you recommend it? Like or dislike it? What actions were good? So we end the same way, no matter what the kid is. So this is guidance for the teacher, but the teacher is primarily guiding them to follow the student. Put the student back on. This is the bread and butter of the case study. And the teacher's primarily guiding the kid to put together the case and get the kid to follow some of these directions, and then guiding them to do a gist, and then guiding them in the conflict gist. So the teacher case gives teachers more flexibility of questions to answer, but this is the primary thing that we're interested in the child getting. So at the end, if they can go, this somebody or something, the scientists put together found a way to make dinosaurs live in the present. He brought in some other scientists to help evaluate it. This happened in a park they call Jurassic Park and an island near South America. He did this because he was hoping to have a nice park like Disney with dinosaurs. The effects were the dinosaurs escaped, started eating people, wrecking the place. The problems were now the place was out of control, and it looked as if the dinosaurs were going to kill everyone unless they get out. The solution was to basically get in a helicopter, leave, get out of there, and then figure out how to handle it. That's a nice synopsis of that story. When you're doing a good conflict gist, you're getting a nice overlook of the whole. So it's more than the main idea. You're now getting pretty much the story. Okay, questions on that? No questions?
I think it's just remembering, that I have this piece of paper that can help me.
Yeah. And
I'm looking at all these other papers, but remembering I have all this other stuff that can help too.
Well, with that kid, just be aware that's the case study. You want at least the student case out.
Yes.
Adult cases, the teacher case is something that can help you, but you want the student case out. And if he can nail the basic start of it, then we move into the gist. So it moves down, like I said, it moves from concrete to a little more abstract to more abstract. It moves from really elementary to upper elementary to junior high school.
Yeah.
That's
I like it. Thank you so much for this.
Sure. And again, if he can't do that, can't even do the who, what, where, then you want to go to the more severe comprehension, which will be available at some point. I don't know, George, if you've done that one yet, the one on severe comprehension.
Yeah, I've started cutting that.
Oh, you have? Okay. So that'll be available.
Okay, great. Thank you.
George is cutting up everything we've done.